Have you ever seen something from the corner of your eye that wasn't there when you looked? How about hearing from a friend of a friend that while they were hiking somewhere, they thought they saw something impossible? When they spoke to a ranger, there was always a vague explanation that left you unsatisfied. My name is Chris, and I'm here with my colleague Jack, and we're senior wardens for the Creature Conservation Initiative. We protect the world from the creatures of superstition and myth, but more importantly, protect those same creatures from the world. Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Blink on Your Mythics.
Hi.
I'm here today with my colleague Jack again. Great surprise. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much. I've got a little bit of a tickly cough, but my voice might sound a little bit off today, but
Same here.
yeah, apart from that, I'm doing pretty good, and I'm quite excited about today's episode. Like, just a quick peek behind the curtain, guys. Normally, we only tell each other about them, like, just beforehand. Sometimes if we've got a couple of questions or something, we might speak to each other a few days beforehand, but we try to go for, as you should know, we try to go for creatures that I've either handled in my episodes or that Chris has only handled in his episodes. Very rarely do we cross over. But it's always a good idea, just to ask, have you done this? Have you done that? Quick check on this, a bit of information. But Chris has revealed to me what he's working on today, and you know what? I'm quite excited to hear about this one because I've had zero interaction with them before, and we'll see if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's actually a bit of a special episode today in some ways, a little bit of a tiny milestone on our way to world domination. It's actually the first time we do an episode on a creature that someone on the Discord suggested. So
Oh yeah.
Thanks to Wild, who wanted to hear about the Succubus.
Oh.
And I can probably tell, or Jack told you, he is aware of what they are, apparently. And most of you will probably heard something about them, because they're pretty popular in modern culture and media.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it definitely is. And their depiction is very fetishizing in a way, and I'll try to keep it clean. I'm not going to turn this into 50 Shades of Myth or something, but of course, sexuality is an important part of this. So if that's something you absolutely do not want to hear about, then maybe this is not the episode for you. But yeah, let's get into this. This request is actually a few months old by now, and at this point, I want to apologize for the delay because it just took a while to prepare this, partly because there were different things in the pipeline, and the other thing, of course, is that when we talk about what are basically animals like the basilisk or something, then we can decide what we tell you and all that kind of stuff. But a succubus is an intelligent, self-aware creature, person, and we didn't want to reveal too much about them to the world without their consent, of course. So there's been lots of back and forth with different communities that we're in contact with, and
Yeah.
I haven't personally been part of the process, but yeah, the general gist is that we can talk about it as long as we don't disclose any, I don't know, too concrete details on where there are communities of them and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's important. I don't normally like to butt in like this, but it's important for everyone to know that we do deal with creatures that are intelligent to, the equivalent and sometimes superior intelligences to us.
Exactly.
It kind of depends, and definitely after I've met some people who I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that creature is definitely a bit more intelligent than you are. But that's under a different set of circumstances. But because we are dealing with creatures that have their own societies and their own history with people, we don't contain them. We're not like rangers who are running over and telling them what they can and cannot do and how to interact with people. We are basically just acting as a conduit between people and these creatures, trying to keep them safe, trying to stop them from becoming a spectacle for people, trying to stop, frankly, some people will hunt these creatures, even though they are essentially human.
Yes.
They will hunt them, and obviously we cannot allow that, and that's where the whole thing of we protect those same creatures from the rest of the world comes in. Very
true, very true. Yeah, especially with something that has a history, or rather a depiction in common culture and myths, like the Succubus does. There's a lot of animosity, especially in religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
And,
there's a bit of a theme, isn't there, really?
It actually is, yeah. Yeah, that's why we are careful about this. Yeah, another reason why it took a while is because there's a lot to untangle and unpack when it comes to the history of the succubus as we know it today and how it is depicted in stories about it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we could do a whole series of episodes about creatures that are vaguely connected to this, and
maybe we might.
Different names that may or may not refer to the same creatures, and others that are in a similar category, like, we don't need to delve into this right now. I'm gonna name drop a few things here and there, maybe, but I'll try to keep it more or less concise.
Yeah.
With that said, let's start with what are they actually. The succubus is pretty much humanoid, average height, average lifespan. They're pretty similar to us in most regards, to be honest. And one of the defining things about them that is actually true from the tales is their, let's call it, a high sex drive. They are quite enthusiastic about doing the thing to a level that would be diagnosed as hypersexuality in any human usually. Of course, there are exceptions, as there are always, but there's a very obvious trait they have.
Yeah.
And this even reflects in their names, because there's quite common knowledge. You've probably heard about this, but I just want to mention the name succubus comes from Latin, and it's basically a combination of sub, which means under, and cubare, to lie. So basically, someone who lies underneath, and obviously that is in relation to sexual positions.
Yeah, certainly.
And here's the first point where it gets interesting, because there is another word which refers to their male counterparts. So succubus is typically female, and their counterpart is the incubus, which is basically the opposite. It's someone who lies on top.
Oh, okay.
Because traditionally people couldn't handle the scandalous idea of a woman being on top. And an interesting thing is that there does not seem to be a neutral term, like an umbrella term that you call both of them, like the species. It's very regional. There are different ways that people refer to their species or race or whatever you would call it in that context. I've heard one common one is the concubus, which is basically in the same vein as succubus and incubus. This one would be to lie with someone or next to someone.
Do you think it's connected to concubine?
Probably. I mean, it's probably a very popular profession among them. So,
I mean, we certainly can't say no to that. But I mean, Latin is the more we actually go into Latin names, the more I sit there and think, Latin is really literal.
It is.
Like there's no kind of like middle ground. It's like under lie, top lie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes when people try to translate it today, they are very free in their translation. Like one that I found for Incubus was nightmare what lies down on one whilst one sleeps. And
Oh, God.
I had Latin in school. It's been a while, but there's no way that this amount of letters means that amount of information. But
Yeah, some people are free with an interpretation, aren't they, really?
Exactly. Yeah, neutral names. There are a couple more interesting ones. One is just the cubus or cubi, like you just drop the prefix.
Okay.
And one interesting one that we're probably gonna mention later because I didn't know how to structure this is the karina. And that is a term that comes from Arabian mythology, which refers to a spirit that basically has sex with people while they sleep, which is, the common factor that they have with succubi. And
I mean, that's pretty much what the myth is, isn't it? Really, the whole legend.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not entirely true, but it is something that they can do if they want to. But it's just usually they do not want to miss out on the physical part, so it's more like a.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually very curious about what else kind of drives them, because again, even within the CCI, those of us who don't really handle them. I mean, we've got to be careful of that word. It's handling them. Those of us who don't interact with them. It's probably a better way to put it.
Yes.
We're human beings. We can very easily, unfortunately, get caught up in the mythology behind some creatures. It's and even we're not perfect. I mean, one of the things that we do on this podcast is actually look at the mythology. When we are in the field, we actually deal with what we have as the creature in front of us a lot of the time. So, as you were saying earlier, this took a while to go through because we're not encyclopedias of all the knowledge on these creatures. It takes us a bit of time.
Exactly.
We've got to learn it along so we can teach it to you guys and then tell you what's wrong or right. And
definitely,
I'm not going to pretend like the wardens don't sometimes fall back into some of the probably more adolescent ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, one problem is with most of these creatures that we talk about. There's a certain amount of truth to these myths.
Yeah.
That's why these myths exist in the first place. So it can be kind of hard to separate what's true from what has been added to the stories over centuries or sometimes millennia of people talking about it.
Yeah.
And when you haven't dealt with them personally or have no other hands-on experience, let's not call it hands-on experience in this case, but you know what I mean. Yeah, when you have not, there's no rescuing that. What I'm trying to say is it's sometimes hard to know what is true and what's not, and especially when parts of them are true and just exaggerated. Yeah. Anyway, let's get on with it because I have a bunch of notes here and we're already quite some time in.
We're getting into it.
Yes. So, there is a common perception that sex with succubus will drain your soul or your life force or whatever the hell else. And that is, let me just be clear here, that is entirely a myth.
Excellent.
The only thing that can maybe happen is exhaustion, because, as I said, they are very enthusiastic.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there have been incidents, but these things happen in humans as well. If someone has a heart condition and gets too excited, then they...
vigorous exercise.
Yeah, vigorous exercise can give you cardiac events, and there's a lot of exercising involved. And they mostly live among humans, and they have been for as long as either us or them are aware, apparently. And they do tend to seduce humans as they do in the stories, partly just for fun and partly for reproduction, because we are actually a part of their reproductive cycle, which we'll get into later in some more detail.
Excellent.
But yeah, we've mentioned a couple minutes ago that they can have sex with someone in their dreams, and that part is actually true as well.
Really?
Yes, they have a certain, as I said, it's not their main method of operations usually, but they have a certain connection to the subconsciousness. It's not, it's not like telepathy or something, but
interesting stuff.
Of course, they have the whole physical pheromone thing going on, which is mostly the case in any creature that is in any way focused on sex in any way, or even in just luring people in.
Just anything.
It's always a common thing.
Anything that really affects the psychology of a person. I mean, you were talking about Squonk a few weeks ago having potentially up to pheromone.
Exactly, yeah. Now that's a combination of creatures I didn't expect. Yeah, what was I going to say? They have this ability to, what's a good way to put it? I would say they can kind of tickle your unconsciousness in a certain way.
Okay, so
it's maybe the best way to put it. It's,
stimulate your unconscious mind.
Yeah, stimulating is a good word. And of course, when you're asleep, then your subconscious is a lot more on the forefront, and that's how they can basically interact with your dreamscape, if that's the right word.
Okay.
So that's definitely a thing that that exists.
Yeah.
And yes, seducing humans, one thing that helps them a lot doing this is that they are limited shapeshifters. So again, we have a shapeshifter here, and it's limited in the sense that they are not going to turn into a bear or a table or something. They keep their general assortment of limbs and even a mass. Like, they're not going to be 8 foot tall suddenly or something.
Okay.
But you could probably call it cosmetic for the most part. Like, they can change their face, skin tone to an extent, the hair color and stuff like that, and that helps them, of course, when they want to seduce someone. It's very useful to be able to look exactly like what this person prefers. Know what I mean?
I mean, let's be perfectly honest here. We don't do anything like kink shaming around here. If you like bears, that's your thing. Go right ahead. I'm not going to argue with that. Just unfortunately, Succubus ain't going to be looking like one, apparently.
Yeah, definitely not.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I knew where you were going, and my brain just went.
I would advise against trying to have sex with a bear. It usually does not end well.
We'll see if that part stays in.
Yeah. So, as always with shapeshifters, of course, there's a question of what do they really look like? Do they have a natural state of being? And it's kind of complicated because they have certain traits when they are born. Like, they tend to have reddish skin color, and sometimes they have, or they tend to have tails and claws sometimes. And that's probably the origin of the more demonic depiction in history. And you could probably call that their real look in some ways, but then again, when you are a shapeshifter, then that term of what do you really look like, it doesn't have quite the same meaning, because when you change your hairstyle, nobody's going to ask you, but what's your real hairstyle? And they can basically change however they want to.
Okay.
And so basically, some of them prefer a certain human-like look, and some prefer to change every day or week, or some prefer to showcase their less human features.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, some are really proud of their wings, for example.
Interesting.
Which are more vestigial, so they're not gonna fly around, but it's a certain aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, getting into the history or depiction of them, there's really a ton of similar creatures all over the place and all over time, which may or may not refer to the same kind of being. And even for us, it's not always clear which stories are really actual creatures, because some of them even we haven't seen.
Yeah.
And we're not always sure if that's because they are just hiding so well, or maybe it's like a mutated story that refers to something else entirely.
There's always the chance, the very, very sad chance, that potentially it was actually a variation of the species, and prior to the CCI actually existing, they were, made extinct as well. That's always
yes.
That's the one. That's the eventuality that we don't like to think about. But such is reality. The CCI hasn't existed forever,
and even then, we're not all powerful. So, yeah, things do happen, and especially in older times have happened.
Yeah.
Anything that's vaguely demonic will not have had a great time in medieval times.
No.
And yeah. And the church likes to call pretty much everything demonic. So yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't fit in.
Yeah. And yeah, as I said, there's a lot of things that are connected to them. Like sometimes many people have heard about sleep paralysis demons, and there's a certain overlap there because of the whole having sex in their dreams thing.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some overlap there, and of course there's sirens, which are their own thing, but in folklore they sometimes overlap a bit, and there are certain similarities, like luring people in by seduction and other things, and there's a whole list I could go through with creatures that are focused on sexual intercourse with humans, sometimes with more consent, sometimes with less.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go too much into that.
It's certainly not uncommon, let's say, hunting practice.
Yes.
I think that's probably the right way to say it.
Yeah, you could say it like that.
Yeah, but there are, to some creatures, we are prey.
Yep, definitely. I mean, we've talked about others before, like your white horse that doesn't exist.
True.
To eat them.
Yeah.
And luckily
that ghouls.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of creatures that do not like us very much, and
I mean, the problem sounds a little bit more like they like us a lot, especially with barbecue sauce.
Yeah, exactly. Hello everyone, it's Editing Chris speaking to you from the future. Me not afraid. So you might be wondering what this little fade out here is about, and the long and short of it is that this episode turned out a little bit longer than we had planned. We tend to shoot for about half an hour per episode, and we're not too strict if we're a few minutes above or below that, but this one turned out a little bit bigger, and so we decided to split it up into 2 parts. So congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode, which is actually the middle of the episode, but this way you get 2 ends in 1 episode, which is something. I don't know what it is, but it's surely something. So if this is the end, this is where we would usually do our little advertising segment, so I'm gonna do that by myself real quick. As always, follow us, give us a rating, share it with everyone, and I don't mean everyone I mean everyone. These things really help us out the algorithm rules the world, you know these things. Also, there's a Discord that you can join, which should be in the episode description, and yeah, there you can talk to people, which sounds scary, but it can be nice, and you can talk about the episodes that we've done, you can request any creatures that you want to know more about. You could also request creatures that you'd like to know less about, but I'm not sure we can help you with that. So this is gonna be it for this episode, which is half an episode, but you get what I mean. Don't miss out on the second part, where you maybe learn where I like to spend my vacation in London. And I suppose this time it's not goodbye, it's see you in the next one.